No, it's not. Welcome, everybody, back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It's another special interview Wednesday. And this time we're bringing back another series that we called Ringside View, where we talk to people that in wrestling, but not necessarily the people that stepped in the ring. Or we'll find out if our guest has stepped in the ring. This is a streaming sensation. I've recently started watching on TikTok, funnily enough. When I go down those TikTok holes, I see wrestling reaction videos. And the majority of the ones I see are the man that I'm going to be speaking to today. His name is Connor, but you guys know him as Conman167. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Adam. It's very kind of you to have me on that. And that's a hell of an introduction. Like calling me a streaming sensation, that's a first right there.
5.1 million likes on your TikTok. You're a sensation, Connor.
Dude, well, hey, the fact that you're seeing me in your algorithm makes me very happy. I appreciate you taking the time to have me on this as well, man. You do some great stuff, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm literally excited to have the conversation with you, everything you've been doing. Before we get into all that, let's strip it right back. Obviously, you're Canadian born and bred, so the hearts would have been a big thing about you in wrestling, I would assume.
Yep.
Anyway, I may be wrong. How did this initially love of wrestling start with you?
Very good question, because like I didn't really get into wrestling until like 2005. So
Wow.
I'm 29 years old. So I started in 2005 in my grade 5 year. And the way that I discovered wrestling, we were on our way back from like a swimming something with the school. I'm not sure if it was like a thing where like we had to go as a gym class or if it was just like a random field trip, but we were coming back from the swimming pool and my friends in the back seat of the bus were listening to wrestling theme songs. And I had never been introduced to this world of wrestling before. And I remember them putting Batista's theme song in my ear. And I was hooked. Right from that moment, I went home that day, tried to find wrestling on the TV. My parents told me I couldn't watch it. So for the next couple of years, I literally would sit there with it almost on mute, trying to watch the show and flipping back to like the Family Channel or Sports Center or whatever I may have been watching at the time. But I fell in love with pro wrestling. Like I really truly started following the product in like 2008, but from '05 to '08, I was sitting there like last channel on the clicker, ready to go back and forth. But I love it, man. I'm so glad that I got introduced to it back in 2005.
Yeah, I mean that would have been the year that I went. So I'm 40, so there's a bit of a difference but I went to I think that's when I went to my first WrestleMania. Yeah, 21. It was, yeah. That was the first
Wow, man. That
WrestleMania.
would have been incredible to be there. But you also mentioned Bret Hart. I got something funny here to tell you. All right. I am Canadian. And you would think all Canadians love Bret Hart, but I'm a Shawn Michaels guy. And like because I started watching in 2005, I didn't know
Oh
at the
my
time
God.
what had happened like in the
Yeah.
past. I was just like, oh, here's Shawn Michaels. I like him. He's like part of DX. He's got these glow sticks and he's going around telling people to suck it. Like it was great. But I didn't know everything that happened before then until I started learning more about the business. And I'm like, I'm very conflicted because I'm supposed to love this Canadian icon in Bret Hart, but I have zero connection to him. And all my connection is through Shawn Michaels, my favorite wrestler of all time. And I'm Canadian. I feel like I should have to hand in my Canadian card for this.
Yeah, sacrilege. I think they would call that
I
for
think
Joy. I
so.
remember when they made it up, they come over to the UK. They done like a WrestleCon thing over here in London, and I got a picture with them both, and it was they were doing like joint pictures. It was incredible. But obviously myself going into again 97, I would have been 13, so I didn't really know the ins and outs. I started
Right.
to so in the UK to give you paint a picture of WCW WWE, it was the Friday Night Wars for us. We had
Okay.
Cartoon Network, and after that finished, Nitro would come on. And then we had Sky Sports, which would have Monday Night Raw on a Friday. The
So
internet
you
was,
had to wait the entire week to watch Monday Night Raw on a
yes,
Friday.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
And obviously the internet isn't as big as it is now. So it was literally, so I used to watch like Johnny Bravo on cartoon. That would finish, watch the first, and it was on at different times. So I'd watch
Right.
the first hour of Nitro, then I'd flick over. I was always a WWE guy, but if the first hour was free, so I thought I'd have a free hit of Nitro for an hour, then I would switch over to watch Monday Night Raw, and that's generally where I kept until like they used to have like a commercial break just before the top of the hour. So I'd flick it back and watch the main event of Nitro, and by the time that finished, it'd be back, Raw would be back on.
This goes to show why the UK fan base is as strong as it is, because you guys literally had to go out of your way growing up to watch WWE. It wasn't available like
No.
just at the live time on Monday nights. You had to
Mm.
go out of your way to find it. Like, so yeah, it's incredible the fan base that the UK has right here for wrestling. And it goes to show with All In coming up this weekend, like
Yeah.
the product over there is loved for sure.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, I think WWE now going globally a lot more. And I mean, one of your reaction videos I remember vaguely was Backlash in France
Mm.
with AJ Styles and the French fans, you know.
The crazy crowd there. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness. Wow.
that was,
They're incredible. That's like a generational crowd that we lived through that night.
yeah, we certainly did. I want to go actually back because you said you went into wrestling in 2005, though. I would have loved your reaction videos during the Attitude Era.
God, me too. I can only imagine it. Like I am trying to educate myself as much as I possibly can on the wrestling business. And so
Mm,
one thing I really enjoy doing is going through the past and watching every pay-per-view that I can, right? And just watching in chronological
mm.
order. It's enjoyable for me. I'm not always watching the closest, but like, you know, you figure out what's happening. And the amount of times that these moments have happened in pro wrestling where I'm like, man, I can picture my reaction right now. This would have been a million viewed clip on TikTok if we had it back then, but unfortunately can't really do that now, can we?
No, it wouldn't have the same effect. As what I would say, what kind of reviews I do watch a lot. There's a lot of reaction stuff out there and on YouTube and TikTok. With you, and what I like about you is there feels an authenticity about it. You know that sometimes you watch one and you kind of think, I think they know it's already happened. Like it's one of
Yep.
them ones where they've watched it and they review it back. But because you do it live of it, there is such an authenticity, and I love that about your stuff because it's so like the emotion is there. If you get what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, big time. It's the draw of the streams, right?
Mm.
People want to watch wrestling with somebody in real time. Like I'm sure you grew up with it as well, where you're watching it on Fridays and you want to talk to somebody about it, but maybe you only have a couple friends at school that watch it, or maybe not even a single friend at school that watches it, and you're left all alone. Like I feel like that's what my streams allow people to have, is a community to watch pro wrestling with. And in 2024, we're seeing so many people be drawn to that because they just want a community to be a part of and to talk wrestling with. So yeah, it's what I bring forward with my streams. I love that you mentioned the authenticity, because I love to just say I'm a wrestling fan, right? I sit there and I watch the shows and I enjoy it, and I just so happen to have other people that want to watch me. I'd still watch wrestling if I didn't do this for a job, you know. I love it.
It is great. I still another one that remembers me. It was quite recently. Was when Ethan Page debuted in NXT, and you're like, "Holy shit, Ethan Page!" Because he's a good friend of your program,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Like I sorry to just jump right in there,
Yeah,
but
go.
like I'm getting married in a year, and one of my
Brilliant.
groomsmen, his sister dated Ethan Page
Oh
growing up in
wow.
Hamilton, Ontario, and like they're fairly close still. So when he was getting that title match at Heat Wave, I messaged him. His name's Brandon, and I said, dude, there's a chance Ethan Page could win the title here tonight. Like, are we gonna go? And we were back and forth on it a little bit because I was just there for Money in the Bank weekend and financially settled on going back home and streaming it. But I was kicking myself. Oh, I should have been there for Ethan Page winning. I can't believe I turned down the opportunity to go. That's on me. That's on me.
No, that's good. He's obviously done it as well, which is great, and it's good to see. You know, I suppose it's good in 2024, the variety thing, and it puts in, because I know there's a lot of haters out there. There's both. There's tribalistic on both sides.
For
I
sure.
hate it. I can't stand it. I watch, you know, like you, I watch 13 hours of wrestling a week. I review it and I do everything. And I like what I like. I don't like what I don't like, but I back it up with my argument. Whether
Mm-hmm.
my argument is the fact that what I like, it's not like, oh, I didn't like that, but I wouldn't not like something on AEW. And if WWE done the same thing, I wouldn't like it just because it's WWE, if that makes sense.
Right.
I would
Yeah.
still hate it. But in 2024 nowadays, and just before we get into how your streaming stuff will start, what do you make of wrestling in 2024?
That's a really good question. It feels like it's past the point of it being embarrassing to watch now.
Yeah.
Like for a little bit there, if you were a wrestling fan, it was like, oh, you like wrestling. Oh, you know, okay. Like, what do you like about that fake fighting? Like, but now people are starting to get it. And I really think WrestleMania this year is a big reason why, with the amount of clips that went viral from Undertaker And the whole ending of WrestleMania 41
Yeah.
with The Rock and John Cena and just everybody
Mhm.
coming out. I think people started to understand what pro wrestling really is it's not necessarily just about this, oh, these two dudes are fighting. It's about why they're fighting and the characters behind why they're fighting. So people started to understand, and they're looking at it in a different way than they used to. No longer is it like, oh, they're just going there and they're going to imitate a fight. People understand that there is a build up to this, and like the characters telling the story. I think people just understand it more now. And part of that is social media, being a part of like a community, right?
Yeah.
Being able to talk about it in live time through Twitter or through TikTok or what have you. People just want that community. Now that they're a part of it, they understand it a little bit more.
Do you think that we have to give credit to TKO a little bit for that? I know that it's a big, because obviously there's UFC brought together with WWE, but I have felt, and maybe this is more of a Triple H thing as well as maybe Nick Khan, I don't know. But one of the things I felt is, if I go back to the word authenticity, I watch WWE now, and I used to watch it in the Attitude Era, and it's very Attitude Era was very wacky, but you still had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, there was that relation that you could relate to a Stone. I could relate to a Stone Cold. I wanted to punch my boss in the face and give him a stunner.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a relation there. But do you think, like with TKO now, because of the UFC thing, and that has brought a little bit more authenticity back to WWE that perhaps it was missing?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of the reason. TKO certainly is successful with the UFC, or at least Endeavor's side of things
Yeah.
was successful with UFC. And so they wanted to implement some of that. You look at like the press conferences, that makes it feel a little more legit, like a bigger event,
Mhm.
right? You get the chance to see these characters maybe slightly out of character, but still in character. You're right, it gives it more authenticity. I think you also have to look at the production team, like Lee
Yeah.
Fitting. No longer does it feel like you're sitting there watching a ping pong game, right? Back and
Mhm.
forth, back and forth. When they introduce those like 2 minute stable shots around the outside of the ring and just not cutting at all, it felt like you were there in the arena, right? It felt
Yeah.
like you were actually part of that crowd as opposed to watching a TV show. So in part, yeah, it's the booking of Triple H, and yeah, it's in part of the production team with Lee Fitting and his team that he's got, and it's the execution from TKO putting on these big events, allowing them to go international, taking risks, booking stadium shows, going to 2 nights of SummerSlam, right? All of this is like big brain stuff that's going on, which is making WWE feel even bigger, the biggest it's ever felt, to be honest. Like, I know we had the Attitude Era where it was like, this is popping off, most amount of viewers on TV, but when you listen to the crowds today and you look at the hype of social media and attendance across the globe, it's hard to argue, but this is the best era we've ever lived through, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that. I was bought, as I say, I grew up in the Attitude Era, but this for me is the best era of wrestling, and I'm enjoying living through it, so to speak. But enough of wrestling for now. Let's move on to your good self, Connor. So, when did you get this idea? Because obviously, there's things that we do. We do the review shows. We do a lot of that. We do interviews with wrestlers, etc., etc. What made it for you to do a streaming part?
Well, I started making content back in 2012,
Yeah.
and I made Minecraft content. So I was
Uh,
just sitting there as a 17-year-old kid, uh, making Minecraft videos, and I was like, this is fun. I'll play a little gaming stuff and I'll make a video. And I've got some friends on like this Minecraft server that I made videos with as well. But that introduced me to video content creation, and I did that all the way until 2016. And I went through school for broadcasting, and I started enjoying talking into a microphone and producing a show. And I got thinking, well, what is it that I actually enjoy? I enjoy hockey. I enjoy football. I enjoy pro wrestling. Is there something there in the world of sports, right? And so I tried doing the WWE 2016 draft live stream. I just literally jumped live because I had my computer set up. I had my mic, had my webcam. I'm like, maybe there's something here. And it popped off. It instantly became my most viewed video I'd ever done at that point. The amount of subscribers I got in, the live viewers and all that. I said, I'm doubling down on this. Buy Minecraft. We're done with that now. Buy everything else. I'm just going to literally focus on pro wrestling. And yeah, I just streamed it. My buddy on the Minecraft server made an overlay for me. He was like, here, I've got some Photoshop experience. Let me just whip you up something really quick. It was my first ever overlay I had for doing wrestling watch alongs. And it just kind of took off from there. 2017 Royal Rumble happened. That grew the channel from like, I think we were at like 13,000 subs to like 30,000 in one
wow.
night. Like it popped off. We were trending on YouTube in the live stream trending tab, 800 and something thousand viewers that night. to me, I was just like, okay, we finally arrived. We figured out what it is we have to do now. Just triple down on this and figure out how to make it the most entertaining streams I can.
Wow. And was that the point then that Royal Rumble that kind of we said, because you said you had like 13 odd thousand before that. So it was it was successful before, but was it at that precise moment when you were like, okay, we really have something here?
It was literally that moment. I texted my mom. It's kind of funny to say. I texted my mom. I said, I think this could turn into a job. It was like that's when it kind of happened. And I knew that I always wanted to be in the content creation side of things. Like it's the reason why I went through broadcasting. I was like, I want to be involved in some sort of media, whether it's like creating a radio show or whether it's producing something on my YouTube channel or God, like announcing a sports game. You know, I wanted to be involved in some sort of creation space. And when that took off, I'm like, here it is. This is my direction, right? I was still in school at the time. I finished out I finished out my 2 years of broadcasting, switched over to business, and only got through half the year before I decided to go full time with YouTube. But got a lot of experience through school, kept going on with it. And yeah, it kept growing. Like 2017 for me was that year where it's like everything spiked. Like it took off in 2017. And then from there, it kind of actually dialed back. Like wrestling was losing steam, right? 2018, 2019, it wasn't that great. 2020, we were somewhat picking up, and then the pandemic hit. And the pandemic, brought a lot of viewers in because people were at home, but it wasn't like beforehand where it was like growing like crazy. It actually stagnated for a long time. It's only been this year that it really kind of picked back up again. But yeah, crazy journey to get here. It really was.
That's quite interesting that you mentioned about stagnating. What part do you think, and this is again where I'll go back about variety that we were just talking about. Do you think that AEW may have had something to do with it?
Yeah, probably. I think the Wednesday Night Wars were the main draw for a while. Like people were tuned out of Raw, people were tuned out of SmackDown. It was what was happening when NXT and AEW were going head to head. And then when AEW won the Wednesday Night Wars, the tribalism kicked in and people wanted to pick a side. And when WWE was producing crap like the Hell in a Cell match from 2019 between Rollins and The Fiend, and that whole weekend that happened right before that, Brock Lesnar beat Kofi Kingston in 9 seconds, and everybody was just livid and done with what WWE was doing. So it gave us that alternative. And I think in many ways, AEW allowed people to see that, oh, there is some exciting stuff going on in pro wrestling, right? It's not just the Vince McMahon booking way where it felt like nobody could move forward except for the chosen ones, right? So yeah, I'd go ahead and say AEW is a part of the reason why WWE is as successful as it is today. I'm not going to sit here and say that they wouldn't be successful without AEW being around, because I think they always would figure out how to get back on top. But, AEW showed that there's something else out there.
Exactly that. They certainly did. It comes going back to your good self there, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. You started in sort of 2012 time. What sort of advice? So we've been going like, a couple of years. So this is probably the second year of the podcast. No, the third year of the podcast, second year of myself being on the podcast. I joined sort of 2 years ago. What advice would you give content creators? We had Matt Cardona, and he was one of the guys that really opened up our eyes and said, if you're going to do something and you say you're going to do it, you do it. So if you're telling the fans out there that you're going to do weekly Raw, weekly SmackDown, weekly TNA, NWA, all of the stuff that we put out, you go and do it. What other advice would you give content creators to try and, it's not like a niche field anymore.
No, it certainly isn't. I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Cardona said there, is that consistency is really key when it comes to producing content. Because like, if you take a look at my streams right here, everybody knows every single Monday Night Raw, I'm going to be live. Every NXT, I'm going to be live. Every Friday Night SmackDown pay-per-view, I'm there, right? And they know to tune into my stream at 8 p.m. on those days, and I will be there. And for another example, I started uploading daily wrestling content. And when you say that word, daily wrestling content, you can't break it, right? You have to have daily wrestling content. If you say I upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you got to upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But the key part to me here for content creation is we get so focused on the algorithm. We get so focused on how can this be delivered to the most amount of people possible. I think the goal is to just make the best content you can and post it and let everything else kind of fall into place, right? You can try to manipulate it. You can post it at a certain time. You can say, I want this to reach as many people as possible. But generally speaking, the algorithm pushes good content. And as soon as you finally get that one video that hits, it's you're off to the races, right? So a combination of consistency and just doing it, right? Just getting out of your own way, because there really is only one person in your way of creating content, and it's you. It's
Yeah.
difficult sometimes to get over that mental block that, oh, I don't know what I want to do for content today, or I don't know if this is a good video. Just post, right? Just make content, post. You might have a flop, but you'll learn from that flop. And one other piece of advice that I learned here, and it's from Mr. Beast, and it's actually one of the tactics that he uses. Don't focus on were you was this video better than the last?
Mm.
Focus on, were these 100 videos better than the last 100 videos?
Yeah.
And take a look at where you're at after 100 videos and say, what can I change for the next 100? And try to make small growth throughout those 100 videos, because before you know it, you're going to be like, oh my God, the quality is insanely good. I love what I'm producing now. And I can just get better 100 videos from now, you know? So that's the piece of advice Mr. Beast throws out there. And I think it's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's certainly ones I'm going to write down and take a look at for myself. Going back to your streaming, do you have a favorite reaction that you've put out, or is there a reaction that specifically, I don't know, has hit you more than anything else? Maybe for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, so there's a few. I'd go like true emotional one was Roman Reigns announcing he had leukemia.
Yeah.
I was live during that, and
Oh.
that caught me off guard completely. And
Mm.
it was one of those moments where, like, for me, it was like, oh, these aren't just characters, and like you knew they weren't just characters beforehand, but that was that sense of realism, like. Oh, like I've unfortunately lost some grandparents to
Mm.
cancer, and that hits at home, right? When you
Yeah.
hear that he announces leukemia, you're like, oh my God, like we've been booing this man for for how long? And like, get it, go get him, Roman, you know, go get him, Joe. So like that stands out in my mind just because it was so early in my streaming career, and it was that moment where it flipped, where it's like, I'm not just talking about characters on a screen, like these are real people playing
Yeah.
characters. um Another one that a lot of people didn't really notice at the time, because like I wasn't that big when I was doing it, but I was featured in the reaction, or sorry, the video package for Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair's main event at
Yeah.
WrestleMania 37, I
Mhm.
believe is what it was. I was featured in that. And it was just me reacting to Bianca Belair returning, or something happening with Bianca Belair. I can't remember exactly, but being featured on WWE TV for the very first time that way, and it's all the way back at WrestleMania 37, the biggest show of the year. You're like, this is incredible. So like that stands out in my mind. But the one, if I had to pick, it's the one I think most people know me for. It's the CM Punk return at Survivor Series. I was in a freaking Randy Orton costume and I had to rip that thing off as soon as he showed up, because I'm like, this is going to go viral. I'm going to be everywhere for this damn reaction. I need to get the Randy Orton costume off. And sure enough, everybody still quotes me to this day saying, get this shit off me.
That is quite that. To be fair, the CM Punk, any kind of reaction with CM Punk that I've seen is crazy. I suppose we did, because WWE have a great knack at this, because it was at the time where obviously the credits were just, it was the logo had come up, and you
Yep.
were still I was still thinking, is it too late? What's the time? How long's left, kind of thing. And I saw it was like a 2, 3, 4 minutes, I think. And I was like, oh, this it's not gonna. And then bang,
Boom.
and
Yep.
that's what they do so well. They can,
Yeah,
and they've
they
done
do.
it right.
Triple H learned from his NXT Black and Gold days with those
Mm.
lower third pop-ups that he would do. It reminded me of when Ciampa turned on Gargano,
Oh yeah.
where there's still another 10 minutes of the show left, but they put that lower third up, and
Mm.
then all of a sudden they're like hugging there, and then the turn happens. You're like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting it. I thought the show was over. CM Punk's return was just amazing, but I would definitely go ahead to say that that's probably my most memorable one. It's also because that's the time where all of us wrestling content creators realized WWE is really watching, because they featured us on the Monday Night Raw
Yes.
after,
Yeah.
with CM Punk returning. Like, it was all of us. It was like this great group of people that I've gotten to know over the last year here. Wheezy Blonde, Mr. Santizap, Mr. Tesh, myself, Mini Portable. Like, these people are amazing at what they do, and to feature like all of us in that video package was just the coolest thing ever. And I'm not trying to have a big ego or anything like that, but knowing WWE knows what you do is like the best, most reassuring feeling that you're doing it right, and you just want to keep producing great content for them.
Yeah, definitely. I was literally going to get onto that. That what was that? And because obviously they don't tell you that you're being, that
Nope.
you just get booked. And you mentioned that you was on beforehand, but when you first get to see it, and obviously now the bigger you are now, you said like before the Sasha Banks one, you wasn't that big at that point,
Mhm.
but you were featured, and it was like, oh, I bet you were like, oh my god. But now,
Yeah.
2024, or 2023 at the time, when Punk come back and you're featured again, what was it again that moment when you're like, not that you've made it, but like you're being noticed by the people that you kind of want to be noticed by?
Yeah, like well, more so what it was for me was like because they showed our TikTok reactions,
Mm,
right? And like some TikTok reactions, some like YouTube reactions if you had it uploaded on there, but because they were showing a lot of TikTok stuff, it was that for a while we were uploading our reactions to the shows, but you know that it's not your content, right? You're not uploading original content, you're reacting to something. And so you're just kind of like, do they like what we do? We know that the old guard didn't like this, right? Vince McMahon and his team was very much against it. But when they started featuring us reactors on their show, it's like they like what we do. You know, like they notice the value in us wrestling reactors because so many people have said through the years that like we're the reason they got back into watching pro wrestling. We made it accessible to them. And those 3-minute clips that pop up on TikTok, you don't have to watch the full 3 hour show, but you still get that moment. And maybe you'll watch the next show, or maybe you'll buy a ticket, or maybe you'll take your son or daughter to go see a wrestling show. And then it's a whole family outing. And next thing you know, they've got 4 more tickets sold. Like they understand that this snowballs from there, right? The grassroots program of just getting new wrestling fans. You got to make it as accessible as possible. And they realize that. So when they put us on the show there, it was really just a tip of the cap to us saying, like, hey, we see you. We know what you're doing. We like it. Keep it up.
yeah, exactly that, and you've done a great job of doing that. I do want to ask a question because I did message you on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, because you was given the opportunity to stream one of our partners, Progress
Yes.
Wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
recently. I'll be honest, and because I have to give an honest a view of this, I can't just say they're great because of my past. I love the show, but I found it a bit too long. And
Yes.
5.5. I think it was like better if you count the pre-show, the pre, the pre-show before this. It was like 5.5 hours, and I'm at the top, so I'm at the when they have the ring. If you look up, you see people standing at the VIP bit. That's where we are. So
Right.
we're
Okay.
standing there for 5.5 hours. We've also been standing outside for, I don't
It's a
know.
long day.
It
That's a
was a
very long
long
day.
day, and like, don't get me wrong, I love the show. I just felt for me, if someone had said to me, "Do you want to go after match six?" I would have gone after match six, but I couldn't because one of our friends, Luke Jacobs, was in the main event. But
Right.
what did you actually feel about watching a Progress Wrestling show?
Yeah, like outside of the thing that you just mentioned where it felt a little long and like maybe the middle of the show felt a little dragged out.
Mm,
Overall, the wrestling was fun. I got introduced to a lot of people I'd never watched before.
yeah,
And I'm actually streaming it again on Monday. They've given
brilliant,
me the rights to stream it again on Monday. So
brilliant.
I will be doing that 10 a.m. Eastern time. But it was just really cool to be introduced to a different scene. Like I've watched quite a bit of Pro Wrestling Eve. I'm friends
Yeah,
with Dan the Booker over there, and seeing the UK scene on the female side is really cool. But I
yeah,
never ventured into any other promotions in the UK. So Progress introducing me to a lot of the UK wrestlers that are on the up right now. There's a lot of good talent that is coming up, and the show was fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Yes, it was a little long, but I felt like every time the matches happened, I was entertained by the matches. You know, I
yeah.
there was a little bit of a break in between. Like I think it took like a half-hour break or something like that
Yes.
for the intermission. But like outside of that, I was thoroughly entertained throughout the entire show. So yeah, nothing bad to say about it. If anything, just maybe cut 1, 2 matches out, and it would have been an even better experience.
Yeah, so you're streaming Wrestling Never Sleeps, I believe,
Yeah.
on Monday. I will be sleeping when that's on because I won't, unfortunately I won't be at that event. I won't actually be sleeping, but I won't be unfortunately at that particular show. I think All In's going to be enough for me to
Mm-hmm.
get
Oh,
my
I'm fretting it a little bit because I'm actually going away on mini vacation this weekend starting Thursday, so tomorrow, and
yeah.
gone until Sunday morning. But like I'm driving up to my cottage, it's 4.5 hours away,
Ooh.
and it's going to be a 4.5 hour drive bright and early in the morning to get back for that I think 11 or noon start time for All In, whatever it is. But it's going to be a very long day, and then doing it all over again on the Monday.
I know that's going to be it's going to because it's obviously then this is the thing with us when we have to watch WWE live in the UK it's like 1 a.m. or you know so it's nice for us when we do get like a bash in Berlin and we'll get to a bit more of that in a minute because I want you to predict some of the matches that we've got. I think there's only 4 matches at the moment that's been announced.
Okay.
We'll get into that in a minute. In terms of streaming, we partner with a wrestling company called Ignite Wrestling and we have our own championship there, legit title. It's and we're going to be streaming that. So perhaps I'll give you I can't obviously give you rights, but we're just gonna be streaming off our phones. It's nothing
Right.
like crazy, but you can. I'll give you the link to the YouTube thing, and you can have a little watch if you want. It's on the
Awesome.
September the 15th. And
September
we also
15th.
do
Okay.
September the 15th. We also do some British wrestlers. Some of them you may know from Progress will be there, and our championship will be defended as well. So you'll get to
Awesome.
see our title
Awesome.
if you want. You don't. I'm not holding you
Yeah,
to.
definitely send me the link. I'll check it out. Yeah.
I get the podcast. Was there anyone in? But so you said you obviously you enjoyed the Progress. Was there any wrestlers that stood out for you there, apart from Leon Slater because we know he's TNA? So yeah,
Oh gosh, well this is where I suck as a wrestling fan because I see somebody wrestle and I'm like, oh, I loved what they did, and I always forget the name like a week after. It
I'll try
usually
to remember.
takes me 2 or 3 sightings
Yeah.
of somebody to like really remember, right?
Mhm.
But there was that opening match on the last one, chapter 169.
Mhm.
Gosh, I forget who was in that match. But let me just tell you, there was also that one guy who had that crazy top rope finishing move. What was it? The swanton into a 450. Who is that?
Oh yeah. Oh, now you've got me now.
That guy. Well, whoever
Mhm.
that guy is, I'm very excited to see more of him.
Mhm.
That finisher was insane. But like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to give you any names. I'm
No,
going to be just
that's fine.
straight up honest here. But I did like the matchups, and I'm probably going to check more people out as I continue to watch Progress Wrestling. Get to learn
Yeah.
some more of the names.
So
But how about this? Who are some names that you think I should keep my eye on?
okay, that's cool. Mike D. He was at the show. He was a Belgium guy, really big guy, but I think he
Okay.
might have done that move actually, one of the moves that you were talking about. But he's one. But I think he's signed with TNA because when they done the gut check over here last year, the cameras are following him around. So
Oh, okay.
perhaps
Gotcha.
maybe from the women's side of things, actually, she's not on Rio.
Rio. She
Yes,
is
yes,
fantastic.
yeah. So one of my
Rio.
one of my co-hosts, Fiona, she's from Scotland, so she does a lot of the shows that Rio does over up there, and she knows Rio quite well. But another one that's not on Progress, but will be at Rev Pro Wrestling, who kind of deal with AEW a little bit, is and she's actually on our show, the one I'm talking about, Ignite in September, called Sapphire Reed, and she's
Oh
over
yes,
in
Sapphire's
America.
great. Yeah,
Oh
I,
yeah, yeah,
I got introduced to her in Eve Pro Wrestling as well.
yeah.
Yeah, she's great at what she does.
Yeah, so Sapphire's another one. So our champion, as much as I have an issue with our champion, the Ignite champion, not the Ignite champion, so the Turnbuckle champion. His name's Mark True. He has been at
Mhm.
Progress before, normally as part of a tag team. With Kieran Lacey. He's not on. I don't think he's on Monday, not that I'm aware of. But he's the Turnbuckle champion for our sins. I don't know what we've done wrong in a previous life, but he's he's now out. He's another one. As much as I hate to say it, he can buck his mouth up. So
Okay, all right.
he's
So
one.
keep an eye on those names.
Michael Oku, of course, but we know and we kind of know where he's going.
Hmm.
And if you don't know, you soon will, so to speak. Especially if you're watching All In at the weekend, I don't know if he's going to be on All In, but you know,
Interesting. Hey,
kind of.
maybe a little tidbit right here.
There
Little
you go.
little
Don't
drop of information for you.
drop that one into the. And obviously, the other one that you will probably know was Luke Jacobs. He won the
Yes.
Progress
Yeah.
Championship. He's absolutely incredible for what he does.
Yeah, there's some great talent, man. I'm really looking forward to watching the show again. Like I always say this to people when they're trying to get into a pro wrestling promotion, give it 6 viewings.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like a lot, but 6 viewings to understand the characters, to understand their story, to understand their motives. You can go into one wrestling show and be like, oh, that was a fun show, but you don't get anything really else with it, right? You don't get the deep
Mm.
story. You don't understand the character or their motives. So if you give it 6 viewings, and it doesn't have to be 6 weeks in a row, just 6 viewings of a promotion, you start to understand what they're all about. And so I still got 5 more ahead of me before I'm really going to be in, but like I plan on watching a bunch more.
Well, we'll be at a few of those. I'll let you know where we are when I'm going to be there. As I say, it won't be the next one. It might be. I think there's one in September. I think so. It'll be that one. Will be our next. And funnily enough, you're right in what you're saying about 6 viewings because it took me 5 to get back into NWA.
Mm-hmm.
So Fiona, as I mentioned, one of my co-hosts, she's massive NWA. Like she used to like put pictures on X, and I was like, NWA, that was like 50 years ago. What's going on?
Yeah.
She was like, no, it's back, and then that's when we started reviewing it, and we've been fortunate enough to speak to a lot of the talent there, including EC3. But it took me like five. So I had to, and the difficulty with NWA is it's not the same five people every
Yep.
week. You will
Mhm.
go about a month before you maybe see a Kenzie Page or an EC3 again. So you're like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
Exactly. And that's why like the six viewing is so important, because like you may go a month before seeing that person again.
yeah,
At least that gives you the ability to know who it is that you're seeing. Like if you see somebody for the second time, you're all of a sudden like, oh, I know that person. I'm more
yeah,
into that person. And then if you see them the third time, you're like, my God, this is my favorite person ever. It all it takes is just a few viewings. But like, yeah, the six match or six show rule is what I like to call it. It's a great way to introduce yourself to any promotion.
yeah, definitely. So I agree with that. As I've had first-hand experience myself with the NWA. I want to talk about wrestling. Have you met any big wrestlers? And if so, what's any stories that you can tell us about that?
So not many, but it
Okay.
is very, very recent that I actually just so when I went to Money in the Bank and
Yeah.
stayed in the suite, I was not expecting for this to happen, but we actually saw Judgment Day come up to our suite.
Oh my
It
God.
was Dominic Mysterio, JD McDonough, Carlito, and Finn Balor came up into the suite, and we got to take some photos with them. I was just scrolling back on my Instagram to try to find the photo, but like I've got so many things
Don't
uploaded,
worry.
it's
Yeah,
gone.
sure.
But like yeah, getting to meet those, they were the first wrestlers that I have actually truly met in real life. I've never been so growing up, my dad
Yeah.
was a hockey guy, right? He
Mhm.
wasn't into wrestling. My mom not into many professional sports. They might go to a baseball game or they'll go to a hockey game, but that's pretty much it. We didn't watch football growing up. That was me that got into it, and it was me who got into pro wrestling. So I wasn't fortunate enough to be taken to any of those shows growing up, right? I
Mhm.
didn't go to a Monday Night Raw, I didn't go to a SmackDown or a live show or anything like that. It wasn't until Survivor Series, or sorry, NXT Takeover Toronto 2016, the same
Mhm.
weekend as Survivor Series,
Yeah.
that I went to my first wrestling show.
Wow.
So I didn't get to meet wrestlers growing up, so it was like a long time before I finally got to meet them. It's literally just a month ago I met my first wrestlers. Even like independent people, like
Mm.
I was never in a position where I would have come across an independent wrestler. Like I think the most experience I've ever had is at university hearing somebody say, I'm trying to train to be a pro wrestler. And that's it, like they didn't make it anywhere. So that was my experience meeting wrestlers before. So yeah, Dominic Mysterio, freaking cool guy in real life. I got the chance to tell him that his stash is thick AF, and he loved that. He lit up when I told him, you got a thick stash, bro, and he just like, oh my god, like you love my stash, let's go. JD McDonough though, the kindest guy you could imagine. He gave me 5 minutes of time just to kind of talk with him. I wasn't even like plugging my channel or anything. Like I mentioned that the tag titles are really cool because I like the look of the tag
Mm.
titles on Monday Night Raw. And he's like, here, take it. Like, handed it right over to me. Let me hold
Wow.
on to it for a couple of minutes as he's just talking to me, asking, like, how did we get to the suite? Like, are you guys here on business or whatever? Mention we're a channel, but not trying to plug too many things,
Yeah.
just having a conversation. He took 5 minutes out of his time when there's so many people that wanted a photo to literally just talk and shoot the shit. So, what a great guy he was. Carlito was cool as well. Finn Balor was cool. Just great group of guys.
But I can tell you with Finn Balor, so he supports the same soccer team in the UK that I do.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. And I was at a Tottenham game once, and I turned around. I was in the like a booth kind of, but I wouldn't say VIP. It was kind of one of those experiences things. And I turned around, and there he was.
Really, eh?
We
Oh,
spent
that's so
like
cool.
we spent 45. We literally spent the first half talking because obviously
That's
I knew who he
amazing.
was and stuff like that. And the other one there was two more that I think I could do. I mean, I was fortunate enough to meet Triple H when he had hair and he was just the
When
gay.
he had hair.
Before he turned into me, in a degree. But you know what I mean. He was an active wrestler at that point. And
Yeah.
the funny story about that actually, that was at WrestleMania 26 in Phoenix, and it was the year that Sean Taker 2, and we were in the queue for Triple H, and all of a sudden, or was it the other way around? That was in the queue for Shawn Michaels. Sorry, it was in the queue for Shawn Michaels, and all of a sudden, the, someone just jumped across the table, and it was Triple H. And he,
Oh,
he jumped across Sean's table, was like, I'm a big fan of yours. And he liked it to
oh,
Sean.
that's so funny.
It was crazy. And the only other time, there's only one time I've been nervous going up to meet one, and that was The Undertaker.
Really, eh? I mean, that's fair though. Like
Yeah.
that big mean Mark Calloway right there. That he's got to be intimidating in real life.
It was just because I'd never thought I'd ever get a chance to meet the guy,
Right,
and I was fortunate enough on a couple of occasions. He actually come over here to do a show, like a meet and greet, and we done it then. But before the first time, I think it was 27, yeah, WrestleMania 27, because we went all out. We done the whole VIP package access, every we met Cena, Orton,
right.
Edge, everyone like that. And yeah, he was the big. You just sort of walking up there, and you not know that he was big because obviously I've met Kane and people like that before, and so I knew he was big.
Right.
But I think it was just that who it is, the aura. You've grown up with the guy. I remember his debut vividly. I was literally talking about it the other day
Right.
when we was doing the top 10 debuts, and you kind of feel as if you've lived your life with them in a way, and you haven't because they don't know you from Adam. But it's
But
that
you did,
whole,
but you did, right? You watched them
yeah,
growing up.
yeah,
You saw them get older as well as you
yeah,
got older, right? It's
yeah.
yeah. Like was he in full gear?
Was he in full? No, he was in like a fliction top and a
Oh,
bandana. Yeah, he
man,
was.
I wish I could just see Undertaker, like the dead man Undertaker in full
Yeah,
gear in real life. Just like that to me, like, granted, again, I was in 2005, I started watching wrestling,
yeah.
so I missed American Badass, right?
Mhm.
So it's dead man Undertaker for me. That's the character that always comes to mind. And like that, I was convinced that that guy like was out here murdering people on a weekly basis. I was so scared as a kid. I told my sister, like, it was after like, I think like a last ride match or something like
Yeah.
that. I told my sister, no, this guy actually is out here killing people.
The
Like,
one,
watch, he did a casket match. Like, he
yeah.
put a person in the casket. They're dead.
The one that everyone that growing up in the Attitude Era was the Kane and the Undertaker are really brothers.
Yep.
That
That
was the
too.
one.
Yep. Was
That was the one.
convinced as well. Still was convinced that they were
Yeah.
brothers.
That
I
is
think
it.
they're lying to us that they're not actually real life brothers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Connor, as we start to wrap up, as I said, Bash in Berlin is coming up. Now, at the time of this recording, everybody, so there may be matches added and there will be, because there's currently only 4 matches on the card. I want to give you the match and you give me who you think is going to win.
All
Zed.
right.
This will be fun. This should be fun. Let's start with the Terror Twins, Priest and Ripley versus Dirty Dom and Miss Liv Morgan.
I am gonna say Miss Liv Morgan and Dirty Dom are gonna squeak out with a win in this one. It feels like Dom and Liv need the win more
Mm.
so than the Terror Twins. And I think the Terror Twins can get by with them just like, oh, we got rolled up with a distraction, or more than likely Finn Balor distracting Damian Priest as Dominic pins Damian Priest. That's
Ooh,
my shout right
there
there.
you
And I think
go.
we're gonna then go. I'm sorry, I'm jumping way ahead, but
No,
then
go
I
on.
think we're looking at Bad Blood,
Yeah.
Priest versus Balor, and then I think Liv versus Rhea happens again. So that's my prediction in that one.
I agree. I had them written down as the victory. I do think because we got to remember Bad Blood in October. Some of these are going to carry on
Continue on to
prior
there.
to that,
Yep.
so we're going to get to that somehow. I think this one's slightly obvious, but I'm interested to get your thoughts on it. Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and is this? I don't think Kevin turns heel, but part of me is like he could do.
I think he is going to turn
Yeah.
heel. And the reason I say that is because they moved Randy over to Raw.
Yes.
That's the only reason I say that. And Kevin Owens has slowly reintroduced like this prize fighter gimmick that he
Mhm.
had back in the day. He said straight up to Cody he doesn't want the title. And I think there's more of a deep reason to why he doesn't want that championship match, because he respects Cody Rhodes, because he actually likes Cody and he knows what happens when a title gets in the middle of his friendships. He goes sour. And Kevin is doing everything in his possibility to not go towards that title. But then it kind of clicked and he's like, well, wait a second. Why don't I want a title shot? That was stupid of me for turning it down. Like, that's why we're here. So yeah, I'm thinking Cody beats him. I think Cody gets the win and Kevin snaps afterwards. I think then we get that rematch down the line
Yeah.
at Bad Blood. Again, like the common theme I think of Bad Blood is going to be betrayal. If we
Yeah.
look across the card, I think it's going to be all betrayal matches. Cody Kevin would be a betrayal. Liv versus Rhea's a betrayal. And then Damian versus Finn's a betrayal. If you want to get even deeper, Drew McIntyre versus Punk is a betrayal. And also Roman versus Solo is a betrayal. So there's a lot of common themes across Bad Blood. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I think Cody retains, Kevin Owens turns heel after the fact.
Interesting. Do you think Randy going to Raw is the prologue to Jey Uso coming back to SmackDown, maybe with Sami Zayn?
Yeet.
Yeah, keep your thoughts on. I was going to get into, I was going to say Randy and Gunther next, but you mentioned Punk and McIntyre. I personally, I think this Punk evens it up at this one. And then, like you say, they go to Bad Blood for the Hell in the Cell.
Yep, I think so. I think that's the way you got to do it. Bad Blood, Hell in a Cell seems to go hand in hand. Like that makes sense to me. It would be that final chapter of their feud. They deserve a trilogy. This is a feud that deserves a trilogy. The strap match doesn't feel like it's the end all be all of the feud. They've got a weapon in their hand and they're tied together. Let's get them inside a cell where nobody can run away from each other, but they have to fight and there needs to be a clean finish. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say Punk does get his win back here over McIntyre, probably in a bit of like a cheap way with the strap. I think there's going to be something that is a loophole for Drew McIntyre to complain about afterwards, and then we'll go to Hell in a Cell for the third.
Definitely. And then Gunther Randy, well, I think it's going to be Gunther that wins that. I'm not saying Randy doesn't get a title run in the rest of his career, but I don't think it's just yet.
Yeah, I don't think it should be Randy here either. Why would we take the title off Gunther at this point? This is the man that is going to be a mainstay in the main event for years to come. He needs a solid first run.
Yeah. And last question before we start wrapping up, and you get to plug your social stuff. Does John Cena get the record-setting run title in next year?
See, part of me wants to say yes. And then the other part of me wants to see everybody's hopes and dreams be crushed by Gunther against John Cena at WrestleMania. Like, how amazing would that be, watching Gunther hold that victory over the WWE Universe's head for like however long? I hope he has a long run, Gunther. I really do, because Cena versus Gunther at Mania sounds like a literal dream match that could go down. But it's also wrestling, and I know it's not that serious when we really break it down. And to give that moment to John Cena would be also an incredible moment, especially in his final year. It's just, I don't know, does it ruin then the momentum of like whoever is the world champion at that time, just to put the title on Cena, only trying to take the title off him in a couple months later? I'm not a big fan of it, but at the same time, I would watch whatever unfolds if that happened.
Definitely. So, Connor, we're going to wrap it up right there. But before we do, tell everybody, I mean, I know where I can find you on social media, but where can everybody find you on social media?
All you got to do is look up at Conman167, whether it be on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube, on TikTok, and you'll find me. I'm the wrestling reaction guy. You'll see me yell in the streams. Just come and have fun with us. Come hang out.
Definitely. So everyone do that. Connor is a great guy to watch. I've watched his streams for a while now. I'm so glad I managed to get some time of your busy schedule, Connor. Thank you so much for coming on to our little show and sprinkling it with a bit of stardom, shall we say.
Adam, thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, and I really appreciate you lining this up and being patient with me as I found some time. I really had fun talking to you here today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Connor. Guys, this has been another Interview Wednesday on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. Keep it locked on the channel. Candice Michelle coming up very, very soon as well. We've just dropped the interview with former Spirit Squad member Mike Mondo. Go check that out. Like I said before, Ignite Wrestle Pros, 15th of September. It is going to be streaming. Yes, we will. And hopefully our man Conman will be watching along and to see some British wrestlers. But until then, everybody, this has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. I have been your host, Adam Cousins. He has been Conman167. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and good.